Good evening. This is John Warren, publisher of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our program from the desk of the editor. Joined in studio with Dr. Leonard Thompson III, and we are excited to have an opportunity to be with you this evening. I'd like to remind you that the Voice and Viewpoint is in 89 zip codes, 17 cities, the unincorporated areas of San Diego County, but we are also on the internet, and we have people from other countries and cities and places tuning in. And so we're excited to have this open mic scenario. We're going to be scheduling specific speakers as we move forward into the month. But for now, we're still open mic. So if you wish to call in with a question or comment, you may do so at 858-251-6111.
Yes, sir.
858-251-6111, or you may go to godradio1.com on the internet. We are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube and our website, and so you can get us in any number of ways. And if you have a call, we'll take your question or comment, and the hour goes so quickly, but we're excited about the opportunity to be here, and we have some interesting topics to talk about this evening. You know, one of our, the motto of the Voice and Viewpoint is that people without a voice cannot be heard. And so we are here to hear your voices and to not only hear your voices, but to answer any questions or comments. Dr. Thompson.
Well, Dr. Warren, we're in a very strategic time in the world, and that there's so much going on, from budget cuts and budget issues in cities to wars in foreign land. And I think that it's really important that we first start off, even with the program, to say that our hearts and our prayers go out to every war-torn country, and that we know that this is not going to be an easy time, but we still have to stay focused, knowing that God is still in full control of everything that takes place. And we might not understand everything, but I think that it's going to be very important that we stay aware and we stay engaged, and not just get the news bites, but really look at things from a spiritual and a biblical perspective, because the things that are happening are not things that were not foretold.
This is very true. And of course, a lot of people don't believe this necessarily. And it's such an interesting time. You know, I was listening to someone recently who was doing a series on the Bible and was talking about how, you know, it's so interesting. And most of us know as pastors and Bible scholars that it was 40 men that wrote the Bible over a period of 1,600 years, which was reduced down to 66 books. And so it's been around a very long time. But, you know, there was a time that the Gideons were placing the Bible in hotels. And I understand now that where they were doing 60% of the hotels, that number's been cut to less than 40, that people don't want to accept it, that certain hotels that have the Mormon faith at the Book of Mormon, and we have whole generation that's not even dealing with this. And, you know, the Bible got into the rooms because parents and grandparents, our generation, the ones before us, when they traveled, that's something that they looked at night. They didn't have the internet and all the other things that we have as a kind of distraction. So we're in a different place spiritually. And I wanted us to start off by talking about the demonstrations that are going on, because the demonstrations have spread like wildfire to the college campuses across the country. In many instances, they have disrupted graduation and finals and the end of the school year, and police and National Guard like Columbia, and then Washington University in Missouri, and different places here in California. UCLA, USC had a young lady of Muslim background, and she was canceled as a valedictorian, and now the commencement itself has been canceled. And so we have all of this taking place, and it's interesting that it started off with the people rallying in protest of what was happening to the Palestinians in Gaza, and that rally led to a conflict with the Jewish community because of what Israel was doing and the way they were handling the war. in some instances, I think before the World Court, they've even been accused of genocide because of the number of deaths that have taken place, half of which have been children, and people not being able to get food or medical treatment or hospitals being bombed, all these kind of things going on at one time. And so this has been a very significant time, and it's so important to us because the Voice and Viewpoint, with your help, Dr. Thompson, we just completed a town hall meeting that dealt with hate in communities of color. And it's important for folks to know that going all the way back to October, we have been making major efforts of outreach, the paper has, to both the Arabic, Muslim, Islamic, and Jewish communities to get people to discussion, to get them to participate in what we were doing with the meeting, to form a dialogue, because certainly hatred creeps into this kind of conflict. And with the project that we're doing with the California State Library, Stop the Hate, this is so timely because of so many of our communities of color are victims. African Americans carry the highest numbers of victims, even though most of the attention went to the Asian community following the murders in Atlanta and the attacks on elderly Asian people in cities like San Francisco and New York and other places. And so we just had a big dialogue, and one can go to our website and see that whole town hall meeting that we had with communities of color participating, and it was called Hate in the Communities of Color. It's on our website. I think there's a stream also on YouTube, Dr. Thompson.
Yeah, there is a stream on the YouTube, and I'm going to put the
Yes.
link up so that you all can just click on the link from this program today and be able to save it and share it. So I do want to let you know that we are doing that currently right now. I think that it's so imperative that as we move forth, that these are the key discussions that we're going to continue to have, because in this season that we're in right now, if we don't have these type of discussions, we will find out that we will be on the other side of this thing. So I just put up the link, and if you click on it, it'll take you directly to the YouTube and Stop the Hate.
And this is very timely because we also have another town hall meeting scheduled for May 23rd, which will be at the Live Well Center, the Southeastern Live Well Center, right there at Euclid and Market Street. And in that instance, we're going to be talking about hate and its impact on the mental health of the communities of color, as that's such an important issue. Mm-hmm. And so we're out front with this, and one of the things we're trying to do is have more dialogue. We made a very big point at this last meeting to help define hate crimes and the hate incidents and how we identify them and what resources are available to help people under the Stop the Hate program in the states, phone numbers for people to call for help, and how to deal with all of this. And so it's an ongoing thing. And so the problem has come right to our door now with the demonstrations that we've had this week at SDSU, now back at UCSD. We had some early at UCSD in terms of the whole Palestinian issue. And it's become a situation where members of the Jewish community are feeling threatened in terms of the protests. And at each instance where we have the Palestinian protests in behalf of Gaza and the suffering people of Gaza, we have community, we have Jewish protests, and we just came out of Passover, which was the major Jewish holiday period. So we can't ignore this because we get involved and we are affected in terms of what's happening.
Yeah, and Dr. Warren, I kind of want to talk about a conversation about the protests, about the sit-ins, and also about the whole thing about divestment. I always believe that, for me personally, I think that protesting is good. I think that protesting to let your voices be heard is good. What I don't agree with is when you decide to vandalize a building because you're angry about something that's happening somewhere else, or even if it's happening on your campus. I believe your message gets lost when you then become when you begin to vandalize property and threaten people and everything else of that nature. I believe that when you begin to do protests, you got to ask what you are really asking for. Everybody said divest, 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 but is divestment really what we're asking for?
Well, I don't think divestment will even take place, though they talk about it. The last time we had this kind of outpouring about divestment was when we were dealing with apartheid in South Africa. Before that turnover, the freeing of Mandela and everything.
But I'm glad that you said that, because
Yeah.
I think that this is the thing that I always struggle with. Just because it was done in the past and everybody hollered about divestment, this situation is totally different than the South African situation.
It is. And
You
it's
know,
different in a number of ways, Dr. Thompson. First of all, there's some indication that in all of these university efforts that there are outside elements that are coming in and that are influencing what's taking place. And we've seen that at every time. We saw that during the pandemic when we had the George Floyd demonstrations right here in La Mesa, where they burned down those two banks.
Yeah.
Okay, and people were identified that were outside agitators that came in because they traced them by their license plates and their cars and the whole scenario. So all of this is still ongoing. And when we talk about divestment, that situation is significant because right now there's more aid going into Gaza, which was the whole purpose of it. And it seems like the demonstrations have got off track from Gaza.
Exactly.
And to now they're going after this Jewish piece. And I do not believe that there's any level of demonstration or protest that will make America separate itself from Israel. It just will not happen.
Yeah.
And Israel is too important in the scenario. And what people forget is why we had the attack on Israel in the first place by Hamas. We had that attack because America was negotiating a relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia, where the other Arab people like Hamas did not want to see take place. And they knew if they did the most atrocious of actions against Israel, that Israel's response would be as total as it's been, and that totality overkill on the part of Israel will unite the Arab nations against Israel, which was the game plan from the beginning. Now, and so I'm mentioning sometimes the history is important because I mentioned the Arab Springs from 2010 and 11 because during the Arab Springs, protests broke out among the young people in the Arab nations in Egypt and Jordan and Syria and all of these areas that things broke out, and they led to the ousting of leaders like Muammar Gaddafi and the one that was over Egypt, and all these people were ousted, but then it continues, all right? So there's this element at work that doesn't want to see a relationship, and Benjamin Netanyahu is making the matters worse because even today, when Blinken, Secretary of State, was on his 7th visit there since October 7th, and telling them that there cannot be an attack on Rafah until all of the humanitarian concerns are met there in Gaza. And Netanyahu's attitude is he's going to do it anyhow.
Yeah, and I think that we have to first start off by giving some history. And the bottom line is that Hamas decided to throw the first punches. And now everybody's forgetting that Israel did not incite this, that Hamas started this, and they were doing this whole modern thing, where we're going to be martyrs, we're going to do this and everything like that. That's what started it. The thing that I think that we have to focus on is that we are seeing generations of people being killed that are innocent bystanders. And at some point, as a leader, even when you are wrong, you have to look at the humanitarian side and say, yes, I know that there are people hiding among you. But the one thing I will not do is I will not continue to kill women and children, but we will keep, basically they've taken over the whole entire country.
Well, they're not, they're going to still kill women and children. And one of the underlying principles when America's involved with these problems in terms of countries that have political uprising and changes is there's always an underlying belief that the people in that country hold the keys to their own salvation by whether or not they rise up against those elements. The problem is that Hamas took over Gaza a long time ago and became the legitimate entity there, and that's why there could be no Palestinian recognition with the UN. And most of us don't pay any attention to this stuff because there's too much going on that we're trying to survive here. In the midst of this, we got a president whose ratings has dropped so low that almost Mickey Mouse could get elected at this point. Trump would automatically if he wasn't on the verge of going to jail. And it's a tragedy because so much good has been done by Biden in the past 4 years, but he has allowed all of that to be wiped out. When you consider all of the loan forgiveness stuff that he's done, and yet with the students, his ratings, according to the polls in the past 48 hours, his ratings are so low that, he probably couldn't get their vote for dog catcher, and that's very significant.
Well, and I would say that it's all about how do you message from this point on. The reality comes in, and I will say this, and I will be very candid about this. If Donald Trump gets elected again, I want every black person and every Latino person to look at each other and say it's your fault.
Yes.
Because he cannot get elected without the blacks and the browns. And if he gets elected, it will be on the backs of black and brown people, either because they voted for him or they didn't vote.
And a no vote is the same as a vote for him.
Exactly. So we have to realize and really understand our power and our presence. Now, I will say this, and Dr. Warren, you know this, you've been in politics all your life. There is no perfect president.
No.
There's no president that's going to make us all happy. But at the end of the day, I have to say that I got to vote between the worst of two evils. Now, when someone tells me that after you put me in office, as long as you agree with me, I'm going to be okay with you. But the minute you challenge me on anything that I want to do, then you will become the enemy of the state and you will be disrespected. So my whole thing, and I'm being very honest, if he calls the President of the United States crooked Joe Biden, he refused to put up Obama's picture in the White House. What stops him from when he gets elected or get in office to say, you made me mad, so you no longer Dr. Thompson, you Dr. Nigger?
Yeah.
And will we ever stand up? Because he has told us who he is.
Well, not only has he told us, in case anyone missed it, this week he's on the cover of Time magazine. This week, the New York Times and Time magazine that in particular has written about Project 2025, which is the blueprint for how he plans to destroy democracy as we know it, and how he will do things like fire any Justice Department official that doesn't do what he wants. The people are going to be out. He's going to have hit squads. He wasn't just joking about killing folks. He wasn't just joking. And you see now that for all intents and purposes, he has the Supreme Court in his hip pocket. He has the Congress in his pocket. And even though we have three elements for checks and balances for the government, this one man has just about co-opted all three. If he gets the executive, he will have the government. And some of the people who've gone to jail, he's calling them hostages. And one lady was interviewed says she knows that he's going to pardon her, and she's wearing an ankle monitor getting ready to go in. So you've got all of these things going on which are very real. It reminds me of something that Winston Churchill once said. Winston Churchill once said that democracy is a poor form of government, but all the others are so much worse. Mm-hmm. And we have Trump elements now that are blatantly saying that they want to alter democracy as we know it.
Exactly.
And it's all about racism is the underlying factor, more than Trump, more than Stormy, more than all of that stuff. It's all about he is the vehicle for the fear that America is getting too brown, too yellow, too red, too black. And if we white folks who are about to become extinct don't get together, they're going to wipe us out. And that is what the fear factor is that is greater than any desire for democracy, any desire for inclusion, any desire for a Congress that's representative, for state government that's representative. It is the underlying principle. And so we need to understand that the only way we can stop this is for everyone, especially people of color, to register like they did in the Georgia campaign that produced both a black and a Jewish senator.
Yeah.
And we need to register and be involved and
Exactly.
get ready for November. If we don't, uh, we won't be far from them putting the chains back on us.
Yeah, and one of the things that I want to say is that you must get involved. You know, as much as you all spend time on social media, as much as you guys spend time on frivolous things, this is a critical election. And I'm not saying that based on the fact of Donald Trump versus Biden. It is a critical election because it is going to be a vote for either democracy or anarchy, democracy or monarchy. You know, and that's what Donald Trump wants to come in. And the thing that he is saying is simply this: if I beat these cases in court, that lets you know that there's nothing they're going to be able to do to me. If Supreme Court comes back and says that I have total immunity, certain things go away. And then at that point, if he gets in office, that means that he could walk up and say, I don't like that person over there, kill that one, and that one. But if he's a president, he has immunity.
Well, his niece, who is a clinical psychologist, they wrote a book about him 3 or 4 years ago in terms of all of his mental illnesses, and people like Cheney, Cheney, who was a part of the January 6th committee. All of these people have indicated that if Trump ever gets in the White House again, he will never leave.
Yeah.
He will cancel elections. He will take over, and with a Supreme Court that's in his pocket and the ability to appoint additional court members, because people like Clarence Thomas is only holding on until a Republican can get there to put another young person like Amy in there so that that group can control the changing of the laws for the next 30 or 40 years.
Exactly.
Let me show you an example of how it can be controlled. Two things that stand out in mind. First, if you go back and look at Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, which established separate but equal, and it made what became the prevailing decision of Brown in 1954 was a minority dissent in 1896. And so now these people are going to say, we're going to deal with this. That's like we're going to deal with Kennedy gave us affirmative action in the 60s. We're going to change all of this. Okay, we had the Dred Scott decision in 1850-something, and that decision where Scott and his wife, in one state they were free, in another they weren't. They were fighting for their freedom. And Supreme Court made a profound statement. It said that a black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. And so this whole element is trying to turn that clock back. And we, unfortunately, have not done a job of educating our children the same way our parents educated us, the same way they and their parents lived through Jim Crow segregation, did not let Jim Crow stop people from getting educated, did not let Jim Crow stop us from marching for voting rights and civil rights and all the things that led to the political achievements that we have made. And now there is one agenda: take the clock and turn it back. That's the agenda.
Exactly. And so with that being said, again, do not sit back and be sidebarred by all the things that you're seeing on the news. There are sound bites all over the news every single day. I think that they talk about death and killing the first 15, 20 minutes of the news before they give you any happy story. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so we cannot get caught up in that. We're going to have to be very focused, not only realizing that there are things happening around the world, but there are things that are happening right here in our own country that we must attend to. And let's talk about moving into looking at our own community, what is taking place. And Dr. Warren, you talked about, Stop the Hate campaign that is happening in California, and they're pushing it, all over, but especially in California, we're doing the Stop the Hate campaign. There's a reason why we're doing the Stop the Hate campaign, but we first got to stop hating our own selves.
This is true, because self-hatred is a problem. Some years ago, there was a situation when there was so much black-on-black murder going on. There was a situation in the San Francisco area where I believe it was some Klan members put out a flyer, and the flyer congratulated blacks on doing an outstanding job of killing each other on their behalf, because since you are killing yourselves for us, we don't have to do it ourselves. And we want to thank you and salute you and tell you to keep up the good work.
Exactly.
And that's the self-hatred scenario that we've been programmed to fall into.
Yeah.
And so I want to make an observation, though, so that we don't be seen as racist, that we must not forget that during the pandemic and the George Floyd and all the things, in many instances, there were more young white people marching than blacks in some. So we have a generation of whites who are not as racist as their parents and grandparents, who understand who we are in terms of us coming together. And we're not advocating racism. We're advocating a war against ideology and people who represent it. Because if folks start voting, they can kick out the Marjorie Taylor Greens and all of those folks that are the personification of the campaign that Trump has and the situations we have in Florida and Texas.
Well,
but we
Dr.
got to
Warren,
vote.
I want to jump in and just say this. Number one, we've always had other people, non-blacks, involved in the civil rights movement. They have always been actively involved. We're not talking about this. And I want people to understand that a no vote for me on Donald Trump has nothing to do about his color or his skin. There was a no vote for the other dude, the Scott dude. He got a no vote for me. You know what I'm saying? There are other people. I actually like Cornel West, but he got a no vote for me too.
Yeah, because
You know what I'm saying?
he's a spoiler at this
Yeah.
point.
And my energy is not about color. When I look at the election or voting, I look at who is going to be the best for this country at the time that we're in. And the sad thing about us in this country is we're so uneducated of how politics work. People really thought that Donald Trump did a whole bunch of stuff, but they're not realizing that everything that he was getting credit for was done in the Obama era. You know what I'm saying? And he was just floating on that Obama era. When it started getting crazy when Biden got in, is because now we're on the Trump era.
Well, and then also, the question keeps coming up in the media, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And all you have to do is look at the news clips 4 years ago, look at the body count, look at how many people were dying and in hospitals and unemployed and all of the things that were going on and what's been restored because Trump had dismantled the emergency system that Obama had set up that would have spared us a great deal of the death and losses that we had. It was under Biden that we got the vaccines and we got all of the things to build back. And so Biden might not be the best game, but he's the only game in town at this point. And the other fear, unspoken fear about Biden is they are afraid that Biden might die in office and let Kamala Harris become president. That's the ultimate fear in terms of it. And she would stand in the way of the Speaker of the House stepping up to that position. Yeah. And so these are things that we need to be educated to because when we vote in November, if we don't vote right in terms of California, which is supposedly blue, last election we lost states in the north to the red because people weren't voting.
Well, let me just say this, Dr. Warren. I do believe in giving credit for where credit is due. And if we decide that we want to give credit, and the question is, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I asked you the same question. We have the highest body count ever that we've ever seen in modern day times when the pandemic hit. Now, I will say that that body count was so high because Donald Trump hid information. He made sure that people didn't know certain things. He blocked certain things, and his whole attitude was, if I don't acknowledge it, it will go away.
Yes.
And so because he didn't acknowledge it and get on it at the time where he found out the information, we had all these body counts. So ask every dead person or every person that lost family members, are they better off than they were 4 years ago? I would imagine that they would all say no, because the bottom line is Donald Trump had a year beforehand to set up and for us to have a response, and he sat on it.
Well, we got they're trying to force people to just look at the economy, because if you really look at what the Republicans have done in every instance, they have not offered one valid idea other than something that was to take away what we already have, to move the woke thing, to ban books, to eliminate food stamps and child care and all of these things that we need. We got states in the South like Mississippi that refuse to embrace the affordable health care. And so people are dying because they don't get the kind of treatment that they need. And they're dying because the folks there are not organizing and voting as they should be. And it's not an accident that civics that includes the political process have never been really taught in our schools. By design, that if you can keep people ignorant, they won't know how the system works, and therefore they will never be able to do anything but just have a knee-jerk reaction.
Well, and one of the things I do want to talk about the welfare system, food stamps, and everything else of that nature. Okay, let's hypothetically say that we're going to stop all welfare, and we're going to stop all food stamps. The greatest group of people that are going to be affected the most will be Caucasian.
Yes, it's more Caucasians.
There are more Caucasians receiving food stamps and more Caucasians on welfare. You know what I'm saying?
Than people of color, yes.
The difference is, and I'll just be very honest, is that people, because they're not of color, will give them the opportunity to live in different neighborhoods, will rent them spaces that they won't rent to us. And so they assume that they're affluent. But really, they're on the same food stamp. And let's be real straight, everybody, that those EBT cards didn't come about because they were concerned about black and brown people being embarrassed with the food stamp. Those came about because of the white people who didn't want to go up there with those food stamps and have to show them out. So they gave them something that looked like a credit card and everything like that. Now, they were comical because although they gave you a credit card, they had the big old stamp on it that said EBT.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So everybody saw you up there, unless you knew how to slide just right. Everybody knew you was on that EBT card.
Or you went shopping when the store was empty late at night. Yeah,
Exactly.
you did all of that. Well, even we have so much we want to cover, Dr. Thompson, but we also have a local crisis here that we don't want to admit. We have a budget that's come out that's got a $164 million deficit for the city. It's going to get to be even greater. We have people who are in hotels as a result of the flood that we went through. Those benefits have run out. We have a situation where the county was feeding folks in the hotels, and they took the contract from the Harvey Family Foundation and gave it to Uber, and Uber is offering meals that weren't sufficient. And so we have major commitments in the proposed budget for the homeless and shelter and all of those things, but we lose some things. Our libraries are in trouble. In terms of equity that we've been working on, those programs are wiped out completely. And there's the cannabis issue. But yet I see in the budget there's still money for a LGBTQ plus fund.
Well, let's not go there first, because I want to just really deal with a couple of things that you said right off the bat. And the Harvey Foundation losing a contract to Uber, who is not engaged in the community, who has not served the community. Here's the thing that I have a concern with. If there was something that was going wrong with the Harvey Foundation, with their billing or whatever, as a community and as a civic organization, the county should have stepped in and said, look, we know you're doing good work, but this is not working for us in how this is going forward. So we're going to make sure that we can make sure that you're going to have everything right, but we're going to keep on making sure you have the service because we know that you're responders on the ground. And Dr. Warren, this is a big statement for the Black Power space in San Diego that the county could do it, and nobody has challenged them to the point that they have to step back and take that money away from Uber. So they're giving Uber money for less.
Well, let me say in fairness that the San Diego Foundation stepped up with a grant to the Harvey family to offset what was lost in terms of the Uber transfer. Every Monday night there's a meeting of the flood rescue group at the Jackie Robinson YMCA. And more, the city and the county are not really present. Now, this past Monday, I understand that Eric Dargins was in the room, but when they asked, was there anyone there from the city, he didn't say a word. And people complained that he was sitting there disengaged, almost not interested in what was happening. People are wondering, why does he even bother to come? When he speaks, he wants to compare San Diego to Houston, and he's not in Houston, he's in San Diego. And so we want to salute those those groups that continue to work to help the homeless. They're monitoring home repairs. They're monitoring getting permits. They're monitoring getting people new places to live where they have to move. They're trying to forego the eviction process from the hotels when the money runs out to have some place to put people. And so this is people who are not getting paid, in many instances doing more than the folks who are getting paid. And we want to salute them. We don't want to be so complaining about the process that we don't honor the work that's being done. And that meeting on Monday night at the Jackie Robinson Y is open to the public.
Yeah.
You can go in there and sit and see who's doing what.
Well, Dr. Warren, one of the things that I am going to be a big proponent about is simply this. Everybody wants to complain, but nobody wants to come and get together and do the work. I still say that we have to hold the county responsible. The San Diego Foundation, bless their heart that they are stepping up and replacing what was lost by the county. But again, the county took and gave something to Uber that costs more, that gives less. So fiscally and economically, it was a horrible decision and a horrible move. And we have to hold the county, the board of supervisors, and everybody down there responsible for fiscal responsibility. That was a bad move. And if they said that there was an issue, how do we work through the issues? Because I'll be very honest with you. To get a city contract, you almost have to have a law degree. You have to have a financial degree, and you got to know mama and them down there to get everything through, because there's so many hoops that you have to go through. And because it's city or county, there's these wording that if you have one word off, you might lose out on your contract. So I need for people, and I must challenge everybody who wants to say what they have to say, step up. Don't just cancel. This whole cancel culture doesn't work for me. Don't just cancel something. Take in consideration the work that has been done. You got to put something
in place of what you're canceling.
Exactly.
And that's very important. Did you know that so much of what we do is predictable? In my years as an elected official, when I sat in a public meeting where people were protesting, when I looked at the audience, I could tell which people in there would stay for the course of the evening, who was going to speak and get up and leave, and shout and make the most noise, because people have a tendency to do that. It's been so figured out in San Diego that in some areas with public comment, they restricted the amount of time. In one group like San Diego Unified, they put the comment at the end of the meeting, which is a hardship on parents and people who have kids and jobs, and it's by design to restrict what folks have to say. If they've changed it, I apologize and stand corrected, but I don't think they have. And so these are things that I go back to the March on Washington, the Million Man March 25 years ago. When we came back from that march, we started local community meetings. We allowed meetings at Voice and Viewpoint every week. And there was a blueprint for how to activate the community in all of the areas that we were talking about: education, voting, health, a whole bit. And what always happens is, over a period of time, people drop off. Human nature kicks in. We see that with Black Men and Women United. We have some people who come. We have people who drop off, people who come when they have a crisis. That's the way the human factor works. And we have been programmed, or we have been written off because people have decided that they know how we're going to function. We have to change that equation just as much as these students with the demonstrations are changing the equation. They're saying they're putting it all on the line. They're being suspended, they're being jailed, and they're not concerned about that. And we know from before, someone mentioned earlier, the protests in the 68 was different in terms of the Vietnam War and what was taking place. We're not protesting a war right now. We're protesting the support of a war by our government supporting an entity that's still feeding the very element that's taking lives. And all of the discussion in the world is not going to stop that. So the question is, where are we going to go going forward? And all of you listening, you need to figure out, how do you get involved and what can you do or say? That's why we're doing these town hall meetings.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that war costs a lot of money, and feeding people costs a lot of money. I always ask the question, you spend a lot of time protesting, but how many times you've spent your dollars, and sending it over to organizations that are on the ground there doing the work. These are the things that I say. And again, this war is horrific. I can't condone killing women and children and men, innocent people. I can't
No.
condone them leveling whole cities just the sake of they don't want anybody to ever be able to come back there and live. The reality comes in at the end of the day is simply this: humanity being concerned about human beings has to come first. And the reality is that there are going to be people that are going to try to use folks for human shields and everything else. But at this point, you have millions of people backed into a corner. Going to war at that point with all those millions of people there is a total travesty, and I speak against it. And it's not speaking against Jewish people, and it's not speaking against Palestinian people. I am looking at them as human beings. And as human beings, we have to be concerned about that moving forth in our own city. I believe that we give too many people too much credit, and this is just me. A lot of times when we get black officials in, we think that black officials are going to be the panacea. They're going to answer all the questions,
No.
and they're going to stand up black power and everything else. Has never happened in San Diego. There's always deals that are going to be on the table. They're always got to be given a take. The question I'm always going to challenge you all: will you come to the table? And if I got to tell you no,
Well,
my question. Let me just say that. If I got to tell you no, my question is, instead of giving me just a no, be willing to have another conversation about what else can we get done.
But San Diego, Dr. Thompson, let's remember, even during the Rodney King period, when the riots were going on in L.A. and all of that was taking place, and people were looking at San Diego was just as quiet as somebody who had been anesthetized. And I remember when Fairmark was concerned after what happened in L.A., they had people on the rooftop of Fairmark with shotguns at night walking guard because they thought blacks were going to come and storm the place to burn it down. And I just looked across the alley from the fence from where our business was, and I said, they can go home. That's not going to happen here. Okay? And so one of our callers just made an observation about how people can't talk about everything going on when folks are fighting for change. We know that some are fighting for change. We have to understand what the fight is and who is involved in the fight and how do we make the change. It's one thing to protest to get a discussion going about the vestments, if you will. Is another thing to take over a building and refuse to talk and to damage it, as we said earlier. That's not the solution to it. And the same group of people right now who would be graduating from college, they were the same people who lost graduation from high school 4 years ago because of the pandemic. And so they're missing, two times in terms of something that's taking place. So we're having a discussion. We need your emails, your letters to the editors, your phone calls. We need people are looking to see what are we saying in response to what's happening.
Yeah.
And if they don't see us saying anything, then they say it doesn't matter.
And also, I think that it's very important that don't buy into the sound bites. There are a whole bunch of sound bites out there. There's a lot of people out there that are speaking and they do a big talk, but they won't come to the table
No.
and have some real conversations. And there's more deals done behind closed doors than there are ever in public.
Right.
And I'm just going to be real with y'all. I don't care who is the city official from whatever area. When they go behind closed doors, you got to count to 5. And if you can't get 4 other people to go with you, your initiatives are dead in the water. So that lets you know from the very beginning that there has to be some give and take on everybody's side. You're not going to get everything you want, but you have to fight tooth and nail to get as much as you can.
Well, this gets to be very important right now as we're looking at the budget, because I've been sharing for the past 2 or 3 weeks how, from an editorial standpoint, it's not just a question of District 4 and where Henry is. Henry Foster is one person. No matter how much he wants to support equity or bring back what we're losing, he still needs 4 other votes. When we look at the Board of Supervisors, there are 5 people, 3 is the majority. You got to count to 3. It's not a question that Monica is down there. Monica is just one person.
Yeah.
And if 3 other people vote differently, then Monica's position doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
But we have to demonstrate that we understand. We have to reach across the aisle to other districts, be it other districts of the city council, other areas for the Board of Supervisors. I mean, you might be in District 4 and you take in Linda Vista, but let's not forget Joel Anderson in East County, or Jim Desmond up north, or Noah Vargas down south, or Lawson Reamer. Let's understand the county is right now trying to find a new chief administrative officer.
Yeah.
It's trying to find a new director of health and human services. And so we are all vulnerable because we got temporary people at a very critical time making decisions, and we're not paying attention. Go to that local access channel and watch these board meetings and see who's speaking and what's being said. You can do that at home now.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to say, and my final comments for the night, I want to talk about cannabis. And I want to say this is because you all know that I don't support, investing or anything in cannabis, because I still believe that cannabis does a lot of harm to our community and to our young people. But the issue at hand with the cannabis, the discussion here in San Diego has to do with allowing one entity to be able to control all the different opening of dispensaries and everything else of that nature, and there's nothing being given to the community people that want to be involved with that. They're being blocked out of it, and that's an unfair statement. That is creating a monopoly that is unfair. So I support the fact that they need to have the right regulations. I support the fact that they need to diversify that and not let one family, the Peace family, get so much, you know what I'm saying, and then but yet black and brown people have gone to jail for less.
Well,
and are still in jail.
Yeah, and the embarrassment is that some of the very time that black and brown people serve in terms of marijuana possession, now what they did is legal. And even as recently as this week, I believe the Food and Drug Administration is making moves to decriminalize marijuana, because a city or a state might approve it, but it's still on a federal restricted list, drug list, and it's still a crime, even though the federal government has turned its back on any enforcement. So we have to wake up and realize that all of these things affect our pocketbook. Exactly. It affects the food, it affects the gas, it affects what we're paying, it affects the rent, all of that. How do we keep talking about aid for the homeless when we're not doing anything about landlords and how they're raising rents?
Exactly.
Driving more people into homelessness each year than the number of people that we're actually finding housing for.
Yeah. And I think that those are the key things that we have to continue to talk about, and we must be at the table. Stop just doing the sound bites. Stop doing just the pop-offs. We must be at the table, and if we're at the table, then we can create the negotiation. And Dr. Warren, you have been at the table for years. You have used your paper to be a vehicle for education and knowledge, but you've also held people accountable to statements that are being made. And so I always tell people, y'all got to understand the power of the pen. Because, see, you can talk all you want to. You can do all the sound bites you can. But once you put it to pen and it becomes historical, then all of a sudden, now people got to respond to you, because now it's permanent history.
Well, some people always say that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah.
Okay. The late Shirley Chisholm always said, if you're not at the table, grab a chair and pull it up to the table.
Exactly.
But be involved, and we have to get involved. We have to be involved because we have one or two younger elements who are in effect pimping our cause, pimping the issues that we're trying to deal with by pretending that they speak for people that they haven't even talked to. And there's an element of folks who want imitation leadership, because if they have imitation leadership, they don't have to deal with the real people who know what's going on.
Well, let me just say this, and I'll leave with this, and this is simply this. There is no one African American man, woman, boy, or girl that can speak for all of us.
No.
We all have a voice. We all must be actively involved with letting our voices be heard. No longer will we allow anybody to select one or two people to be the voices and represent us in every aspect of it. We must stand up as a collective, and then we as a collective need to let our voice be heard. As a Christian minister, I have my perspective. As a business owner, I have my perspective. As an educator, I have my perspective. As a person that is at a certain age, I have my perspective, and I will never let just one person try to represent my perspective. I will be involved.
Well, we had one person responding saying that we're at the table, we have to have solutions. Of course, we want to take solutions to the table. We're not just going to the table to rehash the problem. See, that's the problem with a lot of our young people. When you indicate what the past has done to impact the present, they don't want to hear that. But if you don't know what happened from the past, then you can't make good decisions for the present and the future.
Yeah.
Or you're going to repeat the same mistakes. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to repeat the mistakes. We want to improve and have solutions to the problems that we've had.
Exactly.
So we've got to get involved to do that.
Yeah.
And if we're going to get involved, we got to make an investment in terms of our time and some sacrifice.
Exactly.
And we have to be serious about it.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Moore.
Before we go, we want to remind people, you're welcome to join Black Men and Women United on Tuesday mornings. We meet from 8 till about 9:30 on a Zoom call. All you have to do is call the Voice and Viewpoint and put your email address in and indicate you want to be on there. You have to be African American to participate. It's an open line, it's an open forum, it's a place where we share ideas and things that we're talking about here. And we help each other because we agree that we can do so. And so we're inviting a demonstration of greater interest in what's taking place than we currently have. Because as long as we're not talking, people think we don't care.
Yeah. And I also say with this, Dr. Warren, everybody's voice matter, from the clowns to the ones that are prophetic. Everybody's voice matters. And so we never want to shut anybody down. But we also are asking for people to listen clearly and see the fruits when people come out. I don't just give me a soundbite. Don't just wear nice suits or don't just come and have glowing words. Let's see the evidence of your work. And again, the best work, and I want to shout out to all the first responders and all the people that met the people in the flood. There are people working. They're very life away. They're working so hard. And at one point, did they do a press conference? Not at one point that they do major posts.
Yep.
They're doing the works. Those are the heroes
Yes.
that speak for us, and we appreciate them. Dr. Warner, final word.
The heroes and the sheroes, and they're saying being involved, as one person says, is often as simple as paying attention to what's going on and what's being said, knowing the background on issues. Our forefathers, they got that. They read the paper, they listened to the radio, and they were always up on the issues in terms of what was happening.
Yeah.
We need to go beyond social media. We need to get away from those little sites that we hanging on all day and the games we're playing and everything. Get real and get serious so that when it does hit home for us, we are prepared and there's someone there to help us because we've been helping others.
With that being said, this is from the Desk of the Editor, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter this evening. Y'all be blessed.